good point, as any, to open it up to the audience. This evening we are looking for not just problems, and I think that's a lot of what we've heard. And fine, I can imagine that that's what's going to come out in the vast majority of comments or questions. But I also want your innovative ideas. There's a good group here. There's a group of university lecturers, academics, private sector people, financiers, bankers. So I think this lends itself to a good dialogue. Please raise your hand if you have a question. And again, I remind you, introduce yourself briefly. Keep your comments and questions short. Tell me who you'd like to point it out to, or the panel. Let's take about 3 to 4 questions, group it together, and we will put it on the panel. Yes, over there. There's a mic that will be passed.
Hi there. My name is Nisha Arunatilake. I own a company which does metal packaging, so I might so I have 2 points to talk about. So we do metal capping. Our company is called Metal Box. We do metal capping and bottle packaging. So that's an introduction to myself and the company. So I have 2 points I want to raise. The first one is I'm pretty happy with the government when it comes to the education of art and finding people, because we have technical trained staff, because when you do metal packaging, you need technical trained people. So for that we have multiple array of choices. So you have Colorado campus being first point of contact for our employees. Normally everybody's scrounging for these people because they go as hotcakes as soon as they come on board. Okay, so there are NYSC dialogue and the big companies who take them. At the same time, you have vocational training institutes such as German Training College, and also you have different multiple array of institutes which provide the technical able people. So no problem with that. But at the same time, we have also hired people who don't have any technical skill, and together with groups like PUM, okay, you must know the PUM, which has connections with Netherlands. So they bring down technical staff and they train everybody in-house. So basically we have people who don't have any skill at all, who come in as just normal laborers, and we train them to a certain technical skill. So the 2 points I'm actually going to raise is, one, hiring people doesn't seem to be a problem for us. We are okay with that. The problem I do have is, this is addressed to the panel itself, is that you talk about companies should come up, more companies should come up, create employment. My question is about sustaining the employment. Because as a local industry, and you must have heard this many times, local industries find it difficult to thrive. And some thrive well and some don't. So what I'm really addressing is how local industries have to now compete with imports. So you have a local company like ours. We create bottle caps. Now bottle caps are designated as intermediary products. Okay, so now we don't have any exemption when it comes to the protection of finished goods coming into the country. So I don't go too much into that detail, but that is a serious point, and we can see deterioration of our industry. So about 5 years ago, our company had about 1,000 employees. Now it's down to 300. So my question is, when you ask companies, okay, start companies, you encourage that, and as more and more companies come out, is it sustainable employment that you're creating? And that's the question I want to ask from this panel. The second point is just directed at Mr. Patrick. Yes. I just want to say I have a lot of respect for what you did. Okay. The other thing is I would like to talk to you after the session as well, because we do what we have been. Okay. Not as a business contact. Okay. I'm just saying we would love to help you out, because we deal with fruit juices and packaging, and I can help you out with the shelf life extending into about 8 months.
This is what you meant when you said networking.
Exactly. I'm just completely going on that one. So thank you very much. But that's my point. I hope it's very clear. Okay. So that's the question. I want to see what do you have, or what would you like to say to a person like me who's trying to keep our employment sustainable. Thank you.
Okay. We have 2 questions in this round. I'll go. We have one here, and then one more.
Oh, hello. Hi, my name is Nawan Nats. My question is aimed at the panel. I found your discussion about universities creating or emphasizing on very competitive skills interesting. But my question to you is, from what I gathered, there are 3 key points. The main point emphasized was speed. How fast, how reactive should universities be towards emerging skill requirements in the market? So my question is, with regards to speed, is it conceivable to actually react to that in an effective manner? Because quite recently, say in the last decade or even less, we had completely new industries look at Apple and smartphones and iPads or whatever, some things you would have read about maybe 15 years ago, entirely new markets. We have emerging manufacturing techniques like additive manufacturing or 3D manufacturing, which is still taking off. So is it possible to actually predict these kind of innovations in the market? And if so, how would you recommend universities to actually choose and select this type of emerging technological innovations and then teach students accordingly? Second one is I have three-part question. So the second one is mostly aimed at upper management. My question is, even if you do employ very, graduates who want to take risk or are very flexible with what they know, fast learners or whatever, would it have an impact on companies where the upper management basically makes all the decisions? Because if you look at BlackBerry or maybe Nokia, these were powerful tech companies in their time, but right now they are not doing so well. They are falling apart. It's not, one can hardly say that overnight these companies decided to stop hiring innovative or fast learners from universities, but it's the institutions. One could argue that it's the institutions which is basically decided by upper management. So what is the, so my final question would be, when it comes to institutions and culture, to what degree are companies responsible for creating training programs and the environment necessary for these individuals to actually make an impact on the company and basically have a say in the company's direction in the market?
Okay, thank you. I think because those were two long but important questions, let's take those two first. So we have one on, I think, very valuable point made, plus the question was how do we sustain employment? And that comes down to government policy. Does rhetoric on promoting industry match reality? I think that it's open to anyone. That's the first one. And also creating good jobs. Maybe Nisha, you want to come in on that, because that's going to be key in Sri Lanka's future with the demographic dividend shrinking. We have youth unemployment. How do we create good jobs that match aspirations and keeping companies going on the policy coming there? The second is the question on keeping up pace with change. Do you think we can really predict these trends? To what extent should universities, maybe private sector, other institutions, the ministry, work towards predicting a trend and building a workforce towards it versus a more general level training? So I will start with you, Nisha, and then we move on to that.
Yeah, the first question I suppose was about market share. You were saying that when the imports coming in, lost market share, so we have to. So that is again to do with innovation. We have to, not only universities and schools, but companies also have to change with time. When things change outside of Sri Lanka, when people come up with better products, you have to change with that. You have to be sophisticated enough so that you will lose market share. You should not to be sustain that and inspire. And you need to produce the skills. You have to get the skilled workers who will look into what is happening outside and change with that. Otherwise, you are going to lose market share.
Prajeeth?
I think you are talking about not just the market share, but more in terms of the labor force, right? You lost a lot of employees.
Yeah, I think it was about creating jobs and keeping that sustained level of jobs when certain supporting policies fall apart, or when promoting industry versus promoting people. It's a government policy.
Sorry, could I just clarify that a bit more? So she was correct on that. When the imports flood in, they do take the market share, and hence what happens is we have to reduce our workforce to stay with the cost. Could I answer some of the? Could I answer a bit? Not take too long.
Yeah, certainly. Give it.
It's a positive discussion, so I appreciate that, Anushka. What I'm saying is, yes, I do understand innovative products. We have a R&D fund. We do a lot of innovative packaging. We compare with our market, especially in the Indian market, who's coming into Sri Lanka as well. So when you deal with products, what we have is the same product. And when it comes to bottle caps, I would say, there is a whole new world for me, but I don't want to talk about it because then I'll just simply repeat. But what I'm saying is, yes, you cannot just talk about saying that innovation is where we are, going backwards on. When you look at the price per se, and we are dealing with cents, a cap is just a couple of cents. So when the import comes in at no cess, no duty rate, no protection whatsoever, and you look at other countries, and we do this research, we look at India, how they protect the local industry. I'm not going to take the long road. And you look at how India and other economies have actually protected their local industry so that any import that is coming in, if it is cheaper, it is charged to take on a countervailing tax so that it comes at the same price as your lowest selling local produce so that you protect those industries. And the thing is, it's not about the quality of the products. I understand what you're saying. Theoretically, that's correct, but when it comes to practical gameplay, your product is the same and sometimes even better, but you cannot compete because you are 10 cents difference. So that is.
Are you actually only local or are you exporting?
We are 100% local.
I think that may be a problem because you don't have scale. India has 1.2 billion people and your market is only 18 million.
Okay, so I understand. Thank you for that. I just want to answer that as well. So we try to go to India. That's the first point. And free trade agreement is a two-way thing, right? So when it comes to that, now India has a countervailing tax. So our price competes with that. So this is my argument, and I appreciate what you're saying, but that's the pain.
Yeah, absolutely. And I take that point because it puts this in broader context. Because we often forget when we're in this jobs debate discussion, we all tend to focus skills mismatch, education, reform, but it's all within this broader ecosystem. Government policy, business climate, steady, consistent policy making. So I think I want to put this to both Prajeeth and Kishu, who's in the private sector running a part of a multinational enterprise. You see what's going on elsewhere in the world as well. From both of you, government, policy frameworks, consistency, and a general climate that helps entrepreneurs, helps creating good jobs, sustaining job creators, industries, and so on. What's your take on it?
Well, I can directly answer a question or rephrase the question in context. Let me do the latter first. The biggest impediment we have here in Sri Lanka is the market size, right? And that being that, he's saying 18 million, but I hear 20 million, so I will go with 20 million. 20 million people. The size of the market for any product, be it a product or service, is only this much. The focus of the Sri Lankan companies and entrepreneurs has been trying to share the small pie we have. They've never thought beyond the borders, right? And if you want to raise revenue for the country, you've got to think beyond Sri Lankan borders. And that's a different game, right? You can't play the game that you play here, there with the same rules. It has to be a totally different approach. That's where we're lacking the skills and the will and those attributes one needs to have, and those very sharp skills that are required. So that's the issue. I mean, we are training. I know that there is a lot of emphasis on building entrepreneurs, but I haven't seen the people who are doing that advocating this philosophy, right? And it's all to share, protect to share the market. That doesn't take us anywhere. So we need to understand it, right? That's why I said the people asset is the asset we need to use, right? And it's all about using the brains and skills and wills of those people in the workforce to cross borders and compete effectively, aggressively outside the borders and bringing in what we want to bring in.
One more to add to what Kishore said, I agree with what you're saying. And that's one of the reasons Venture Engine was created by Blue Ocean Ventures and the Indian Angel Network. Yeah, we invited the Indian Angel Network to come here and partner us on this program because we knew these companies that are out here who are starting up could scale out there. So the angels who are investing here would come in and give their 2 cents worth to every single company they are investing in. Yeah, so that brings the scale for us.
Because there was other question also, I'm going to choose one of that, which is keeping up with the pace of change. Nisha, the same argument is used when we are talking about industrial development, picking winners, do we select sectors, what's going to grow next. The same thing applies here. What are the skills that will be needed for the future 10, 15, 20, 25 years from now? We put in excellent education, basic education, which we are reaping the benefits of now. Do you think we can be in the business of predicting, or to what extent do we need to put in something where it's gives us a good edge in the future?
We can't be in the business of predicting, that is for sure. I think like companies, you need competition in the education sector also. At the moment what I see is because Sri Lanka, education is provided by the state. And I would argue for the private sector to come in, not only because of resources. Resources are a big constraint. So to bring in resources, also we need the private sector. But also to create competition so that the state sector keep up with change. Because at the moment, I think it is protected. They don't feel a need to change with time. But we need to have a benchmark outside of that sector so that they change.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to go to the next round of questions. We have one shot here, one over there, and Sashi will take those three in this round and come to the next. Go ahead. Nipuni? Okay.
Thanks, Anushka. I'm Desha Jivan. I work for a company called Aries. I have two questions. First of all, the issue that I asked from Nisha Arunatilake, and something that I had to debate with Dr. Gayan Panditharatna IPS many years ago. The role of the government as an employer. I mean, in the past, I think there was a strong case that in the fact that we had a constrained industry environment, there was not enough job creation, and it was necessary for the government to play a big role as an employer in order to prevent social unrest and so on. And I think now the situation possibly has changed to an extent. That is my view. And to a great extent, I think there is a shortage of access to labor for many of the private companies and many potential investors as well. And in this context, how is it exactly that the government should relook at its policy as being a major employment creator? Should it do so in the first place? And if so, how could it do so in a politically feasible manner? And that is an important thing because in terms of in order to encourage investment, you need to have access to a basic factor production. Labor is a crucial one. And at present, we have seen, I mean, in private sector, you see a lot of regular attrition where people choose to move from the private sector to the public sector, take advantage of job security and a number of other benefits that you get from that area. So how should the government look at that? The second aspect that I wanted to ask was, again, in terms of the skill issue that we were talking about. One thing that we know that from Sri Lanka's perspective, we are no longer a country that rely on labor arbitrage. Therefore, we need to focus more on value addition and employment of technology in whatever we produce or in goods or services. And in that context, again, what we need is the skill level of the labor force. Now, just one thing that you mentioned, the issue of what government is how you spend money, not the percentage of GDP that is spent on education. One statistic that I have seen recently is that only something like 7% of schools in the country have the ability to teach A-level science. And as a result, we have a greater focus on arts and social sciences, which do not necessarily create the skill level required for, say, for instance, high-tech manufacturing and so on. So what kind of direction should investment in education need the statistics or need the private sector? What kind of direction should they take in order to create the skill levels required to achieve what we need to do to be able to compete in the global scale?
Thank you. Hang on a second, then the mic up.
Thanks, Anish. So my question is this. I mean, you asked us to talk about things that aren't talked about all the time. And I hear a lot about education, the access to capital and all that in the jobs group. My whole question surrounds immigration. And immigration, I mean inward immigration. There's the government policy of Sri Lanka seems to be based around one where we assume that the number of jobs in this country is finite and it's fixed, and a foreigner coming in is taking a job away from a local. I'm an economist by training, and I know the economists in this room are aware of the whole policy of the number of jobs being dependent on the size of the economy, etc. I also believe critical mass is very important to this. Kishu made a point is that employers believe that there aren't enough people for the jobs that they have. Employees believe that the right kind of jobs aren't there. So it's a question of critical mass, and certainly things like education can help build this. But even if we get the policy right, and that's a huge if, it's still going to need a generation. And my question to the panel is this: what do you believe that in inward immigration, that a good government policy on inward immigration is critical to solving the question of the job challenge in Sri Lanka? And if so, what kind of things should we do? And right now, I don't hear anything being talked about.
Good. Thank you. We have final question in this round here. Sasha.
My question is, I'm Shashi from the Columbia University. My question is to Prajeeth, since he touched on public sector students, state university students, that they are not very entrepreneurial, they are very backward and so on. But my question is, Prajeeth, now private sector as a norm, they don't encourage students from the rural background. As a result, many students end up in public sector jobs and related sector education like teaching. So, as a short-term measure, shouldn't the private sector take an example of the cricket model, right? And where the talents are given a lot of opportunities to create national competitiveness.
Thank you. I think there's three very important questions, both not dealt with in this panel, which is exactly what we're looking for. First question, I will Desha's question on the role of government as an employer. There are political imperatives stuck between having to give a large unemployed undergraduate population jobs when apparently the private sector clearly isn't creating enough to absorb them for whatever reason. And also on the other side, this almost like a moral hazard issue, because you know every couple of years the government will create jobs for the public, so students stay on for that. So on that I would like Nisha, I would also particularly, but if anyone else wants to jump in. And also the second one, where does Sri Lanka labour place itself? Skills, first, we're fast losing our labour arbitrage. Do we have the right skills to embrace this knowledge economy, science education, and so on? Anyone who wants to ask that. So let's do that one first. Nisha, do you want to start?
Yeah, I think this issue of, it is more critical. Desha's question was now the private sector is competing for these graduates, but government is doing jobs, so they are leaving the private sector. They are not really unemployed. They are employed in the private sector. They leave when the government gives jobs. So, but because the government sector jobs are more lucrative, not in terms of wages, but in terms of the benefits that they get, they prefer to work there, and also the working conditions are, they go home at 15 and then all of that, so that is more attractive to them. So basically you need to eliminate these differences in terms of the types of benefits, so that you have a sort of a level playing field, and people don't, and the government, I strongly believe, should not keep giving employment to these graduates. It's kind of a they should take the harder and then stop like that. Because the more you give, the more they will demand, and not like earlier, because now we are below 5% of unemployment. We don't have a lot of people, so everybody is competing for that. So we can't give people jobs that are not productive.
Okay, on the same point, I want to bring Rashita in. Rashita, you meet these guys. The National Youth Services Council has a network across the country, and you meet these young people who have certain aspirations. Many of those aspirations may be towards public sector. What are you hearing from them, and what really needs to be done? How fast could we change this mindset? How important is it for the government to remain employed? What are your comments on?
Yeah, I think I'm sure. I want to point out what Kishu said just a while ago. Also, this is not only about mindset of the people. Also, we need to provide them with proper guidance. So that's what when we meet the youths, particularly from rural areas. So their aspiration is on job security or other benefits like pension rights or other benefits which they can entertain. So they are still looking on that. So with that mindset, they are still. So which means that we need to somehow change our mindset, and also we have to provide them with the proper guidance, especially on the vocational guidance. So we need to somehow identify the proper or the appropriate vocation which they need to somehow catch and with their skills. So that guidance, I think, still we need to.
So mindset and guidance. On the second point that Nisha brought out, Sri Lankan science education, knowledge economy, labor cost advantage fast eroding. Does anyone want to come in on that?
Yeah, globally there is a demand for the science and technology workers, and you see emerging economies, the BRICS economies investing in the education sector, especially in science and maths, because there is a demand for these people. see also at the turn of the millennium, a lot of developed countries change their migration policies to attract precisely these workers, and we lost a lot of our talent to these countries. So we have to do something different to keep that talent, but also use them. Because we don't use them, they leave the country.
Okay. Before I move on, I think it's a good point to entertain that migration question, but Nisha, I'm going to push you. Where does this need to change when we're talking about gearing a workforce to a knowledge economy? The specific question was on science education, the number of percentage of schools that have capacity to teach A-level science. Is that where it starts, or can it be at university? Where is the big gap?
See, you have to start from primary education, because you have to have those math skills, go on to the next level and the next level. If you don't have that, then you don't get the necessary levels to go into science A-levels, and then you have to have science A-levels and opportunities to do that. So it has to go down to the primary level.
Right, to primary level. Okay, on the immigration, I'm going to bring in Kishu and Prajeeth. Kishu, you work for a multinational corporation and you've seen what goes on abroad. Prajeeth, you've worked abroad. Do you agree with that? Do you think it has come to a time when we are going to have to seriously consider the possibility of allowing workers from abroad to plug in certain skills gaps that Sri Lanka has? And do you think that's even feasible? I know we may have we may think that it's required, but politically feasible, is it? How will the population react? Any reaction?
You take the second part, let me take the first one. Something that's very, very close to my heart. We have a suicidal strategy. We import CEOs and senior managers from out, and we export housewives, carpenters, plumbers. And when an expatriate CEO comes in to head a local company or multinational company, they take away anything between 2 million rupees to 10 million rupees a month, right? And to nullify that, we're going to send about 200 to 2,000 housemates. That's the equation, right? We have the Employees Federation head here. He is aware of the figures, and I headed American Chamber of Commerce, where I worked with all the companies. I know it, right? So it's suicide. You talked about policy. I don't know whether there is a policy in place, right? And this issue is not well recognized or is not visible to the right stakeholders. And I've gone around, highlighting this issue to certain stakeholders. And the first reaction is, wow, is that happening? From a brand's perspective, there are organizations which are perceived to be local, there is foreign equity, and people tend to think, there are local companies, and you go in, you find 6 expatriates working, right? And at the same time, there are multinational companies where there isn't a single expatriate working, and my company is one such company, right? So it goes to show that we have the skills, ability to do the job these guys can do, but we need the right policy to govern this whole issue for the country.
Thank you. Prajeeth, do you have anything to add?
Just to add to that. I mean, Kishu was talking about how we are missing maids and workers out there. But if you really look into it, right, we have quite educated people migrating out of this country and not coming back. Right? So you take India for example. Half of Silicon Valley was eating chapatis at one time. Today they're all back in India. Why aren't we getting our guys back here?
What will it take?
Sorry?
What will it take to attract that diaspora? As you see, top couple of constraints.
Get them involved. To begin with, get them involved. I mean, I see Slimtech getting a lot of guys from out there, getting them involved, and people like Ravi Silva who studied with me, he's coming back more often than before. Like, there are a lot of guys who are coming back once they're getting involved, the whole chain of things. So I think the start is to get them involved in certain areas, at least small areas, so that they get a feel for what's happening here before they get comfort factor has to be there for them to come back, right? So I think India created that, and I think we need to create that in that sense to bring them back.
Okay. The final question: private sector not catering to a rural background. We heard this time and time again. There was a survey done that showed that young people in, for example, the Munraga district felt that the top constraint for them was not the education sector, unlike in other districts, not the education sector providing the right skills that make them attractive. It was they didn't feel that they had or perceived that they didn't have the right contacts to get into the private sector. I'm going to start with Gayan, and then I'm going to move around to see if anyone has anything to say. Private sector not creating jobs for everyone, this not being inclusive and not being open enough. Young people find it hard to break it.
Well, let me put it in another way, because I'm now actively involved with young entrepreneurs, training them, especially rural areas. And I've been to Horopatana, which was when the war was there, it was a border village kind of. And these children didn't have shoes to put on actually when they came to school, half of them actually. And as a training, what we did was we told them to do a product which they would think that they could do in real, and just show us how they would market it, or give the imagination of what they want to do. So the master in charge was also there, and they actually came up. This is a story about 1.5 years back which happened, and 1 year back maybe. And these children actually did so many products, and some came up with buy one get one free. These are like, I don't know whether they how they came up with those. I know it's freely available, these concepts and everything they get to know, but they came up with these, that we'll produce this. And when I asked them, okay, what are your plans now? Okay, once we finish the day and we just, I asked them, what are your plans now? Have the training session or discussion with us, had it affected you in any way? The child told me, he told me in saying, is it okay? But he spoke to me, අයියේ මට දෙනවා නම් chance එකක් කවුරු හරි ඇවිල්ලා මට උගන්වනවා නම් මේක මාකට් එකට දාන්න විදිය මම කැමති මේක කරන්න. And that was a feasible product for them. And it's like fruit drinks and all these things. I was in the scene, so I could have helped him. So I told Mr. Kastikama, I want to go back and help them out, because all this, yes, policies and everything needs to be changed in a way. But talking to this young crowd, I feel after school they get lost.
So did they feel like the private sector was at work because the private sector wasn't creating that opportunity, or they couldn't approach that private sector, or did they feel that it was something else in the system?
Because they really don't know about the system. What's after school, what's happening, nobody knows. Especially their masters in charge. He spoke to me, he told me, Uta, come here, come and do something for these youngsters and help them out, come up with their ideas, and because they had the resources already available.
You're a young person now working in the private sector. So going back to my question again, do you feel that the private sector does not cater to, and going back to Shashi's question as well, do you feel that the private sector does not cater to the aspirations or the job demands or job expectations of the vast majority of Sri Lanka, rural Sri Lanka?
Well, this match you're talking about, is it? Well, the organization which I work is also multinational. I must say, there are so many people, expatriates as well, who creates this mindset, which is something really, really sad. You won't feel like going ahead with what you feel. Especially I have felt it, and there are so many other people we talk, the youngsters who come into the organizations, and what they feel is right. They really can't speak up and tell them, okay, we have these ideas. We want to do a plan like this. Why don't you all look at it? So that's the simple question they pose. But the top management, as I really don't know whether they don't want to listen to these or they don't want to adhere to such things. I really don't know what's wrong with it. Whether it's the private sector or the mindsets or the expatriates, I really don't know what's wrong.
Okay. So
how much of it is skills mismatch and how much of it is a language problem? How much is it they can't speak English, and how much of it is they actually don't know what we need?
You mean the employer or the employer?
The discrimination that the employer gives, what you're saying that they don't give the chance to be employed. How much of it is the fact that they don't know English and they can't communicate to them in English and vice versa?
No.
How much of it is skills mismatch?
it's the sad part of it is there is a huge lot, as Mr. Gomes said, who really believes in this expatriate vision, because they actually eye on going out of the country and working for a bigger salary, like his head, who came into the country and work, make them work for him. So actually, our ideas and improvements does not really give a return for us. So people don't want to work. Actually, they leave because of that. There are so many people I know in my organization who has that doesn't get that chance. So it's not actually a communication issue as well, but it's the mindset. I don't know, but especially the expatriates who come out doesn't believe on our skills, or at times they don't allow us to perform. It's also there because they don't want to someone else coming out in a smaller level and showing colors out and just cutting off.
Okay, so interesting perspective. I'm going to bring in Fadil, Hisham, and Fadil. Again, in the interest of time, please keep all your comments.
My name is Fadil. I'm from an organization called Connect Lanka. It's a youth movement, young professionals together working to enable opportunities for more young people. My question, I think, just brings in the last point that was made. It's just not just the skills, but where you go to school and study, get your degree, etc. Then where does soft skills come here? I think that is a crucial part. It's not just about getting the 3 A's, because sometimes the private sector may be interested in a 3 C's guy. Because while they might be providing what they want, they can go talk. They have the team building skills, team working skills, leadership qualities. I think there's a huge lack there. When me and Anush, both of us, were there in Washington last April, we were talking about this a lot. Because I personally see, and many of my colleagues who work with me, we feel that this is the lacking part. It's just, okay, there is an issue, everything what you all spoke, we are not disputing that. But I think more attention needs to be given. I think Mr. Gomes first said there's a dilemma. Some people think they have the skills, but you guys see the whole thing. But what about the people who actually have jobs and don't have these skills to sort of progress? They're still on the same level and they're not taking some innovative steps. I think this is where we need to sort of pay some attention. Maybe within the corporate sector, providing some employee schemes that actually develop these things, and also working with young people in schools to open doors, open horizons, show them. Maybe it's not just about the private sector. It's about young people building something themselves and also making this whole public sector things attractive. One last thing, another perception is that we won't pay into perception idea. We say there's a whole issue, accountants, lawyers, whatnot, and the whole pressure. But what are we doing about it? Again, all these needs to sort of come in a holistic way. So that's my sort of
very, very important comments. I think that had been much before, particularly on the soft skills issue. Nisha?
My question is connected to the first question of the last round. Unfortunately, my good friend Rashita is representing government, but I will still ask them that question. It's basically about, back in 2007, there was a comprehensive study of multi-page document on recommendation and strategic assessment for the National Action Plan on Youth Employment, which covers pretty much lots of issues we have been talking today. And it covered on entrepreneurship, employability, employment creation, and equal opportunities. But it was also adapted by the cabinet as a 10-year action plan. But I wonder what has happened in that document, or is it the case like all the other documents that are. Maybe to rephrase the question would be, just to be nice to Rashita, whether is there any way NYSC can get involved and make it happen, so it's much more easier for you to understand.
Okay, we'll park the question for a minute.
Hi, my name is Nisha Arunatilake. I'm a freelance journalist. I've actually got 4 questions, 2 from me and 2 from people who ask questions on Twitter. First question is probably to Prajeeth, I suppose. We spoke about underemployment, issues on underemployment as well. In the case where, hypothetically speaking, if somebody is overemployed, if you find out halfway down the line, maybe Kishu can answer this. Sri Lanka's labor laws, which are very, very protective of the employees, how does that affect the labor market? Because you might have one guy who you pay a certain amount of money to, but halfway down the line you realize this is not the person you were looking for.
and you really can't get rid of him or her simply because the labor laws are so tight. So my first question is, how does this affect the unemployment issue as a whole, or the underemployment issue as a whole? The second question is stemming from comments made by some gentleman there who was into packaging. Again, and coming to venture capitalism, how much of people coming in with ideas do look towards protectionism when they are thinking of starting a business? Because something that I've deeply believed for a long time is the fact that if your idea is good, if you're competitive, if you're efficient, why do you need protection? Because it's like giving, it's basically giving a head start to somebody who doesn't deserve a head start, because your idea might be bad, hence you might be requiring protection. There were two questions, there were two questions posed by a gentleman online, one by the name of Mr. Ravi Mendis, who wanted to know the source of the money which comes in from venture capital investments. So not by name, by is it big companies, is it small companies, is it individuals, that kind of breakdown of the source. The fourth and last question is probably to the gentleman from the NYSC, which is, has the government got, or will the government put in place a policy or any form of program which would help entrepreneurs to start up their small businesses? This goes against my second question of protectionism, but I'm just a messenger.
Okay, I'll take two more questions in this round, and that will be the one before the last round, and I urge both the last two, first to Charita and then to Professor Aditya. Please keep your questions comments brief, and I have to tell the panel also, please keep your responses very pointed and very brief. Charita.
Charita, after the junior, I might be over for 2.5 jobs, but one of those jobs is SL college, where we help Sri Lankan students connect to whatever the best higher education for themselves, with a big focus on coming back on brain gain. So thank you for bringing that up, Prajeeth. I also should add that I am someone who studied abroad and had to create a job for myself to come back. So there is some mismatch and some pricing issues that are in our job market. But actually this, jumping off what Nisha said about, I believe in markets, right, and market responsiveness in education, particularly higher education maybe, but generally in education. I have seen the massive underinvestment in education from the government compared to, if you just want to compare yourself to any other country. But maybe this has been analyzed, but has there been, can I see a graph showing the investment in education that the government has undertaken, which is in delivering education? Have we compared the investment in delivering education at the private sector or the third sector, if there's a lot of citizen sector involvement in that? Also compared to education spend. I don't know how we can break out the government spend, where it's delivery versus spend, but so many people are spending so much on private sector education, on sending their children abroad for education. Have we analyzed those things? And I don't follow the local news, I don't get time, but I think some institutions were shut down, maybe they are ripe for takeover and turnaround. I don't know, and I just want to close with, I have heard professors talk about that we need to, professors at universities that have been delivering courses within a semester, within a quarter, on applications for Apple, iPods, iPad, whatever, all those things. So there is a responsibility thing that comes into certain universities that do that. They talk about T-shaped people, right? People who not only have depth in some discipline, but also have some, more overall view, which I don't know whether we really produce. And I want to stop with an anecdote. Sorry, I want to stop with an anecdote about a student from leading state institution who was at a small little gathering for someone from SL college who is works at a large apparel export company. So this guy said, the problem, I'm overqualified, so I can't get a job. Is this is the mismatch, right? So you take universities on strike, you do CFA, CIMA, SIM, all these things, and then your expectations and versus your training. I've seen, I mean, I must say, time management, respect for, working in an environment is nil. And it's a huge problem. Having had to deal with this, I mean, you might be brilliant, but if you can't play in a team, it's a huge problem.
And I think that goes back to soft skills, and I can see Mr. Haripay is head of the Employers Federation, nodding his head in agreement. As such, I have to give a chance to people I want to ask. Professor Aditya, the final question in this round.
Yeah, Ajit from University of Moratuwa. It's a statement and a question. My situation is, we talked about the jobs challenge, and I think in Sri Lanka, with all the resources that we have and human plus the other things, that it has become a challenge because of, I would say, of scientific illiteracy that is slowly creeping, not slowly actually, really fast, creeping into the top layers of management. And if I could flip over the LMD top 100, if I could look at, I would say that our top management is fairly, I mean that's what the statement, but it's a challenging statement, drawing blood, is that more or less scientifically illiterate. And as a result, that we don't have the innovation, we don't trust investment on new ventures. So we are very, very risk averse, and we look at this shareholder growth and very short-term delivery. And as a result, we don't look at the long-term investment. We can give many examples, I would say, we can give that. And as a result of this moving away from innovation, and it is innovation that will create jobs, and it is innovation that we can go for globalization, or rather than the external markets. Otherwise, we'll be trying to do the same old thing. These 18 million or 20 million won't do any major difference. We have to bring in innovation, and we have to bring in automation to take up the 5%. I think the 5% is a challenging task, challenging us to take the pathway of automation. We don't need to get people, we need to bring this automation in, and things are happening, but unfortunately our industry is not doing that. So I would say, look at, if I say that our top management in the Sri Lankan industry sector or management sector is scientifically literate, I know it's a very challenging terminology, but what the panel would say to that. And that is what is killing innovation and the growth prospects in our country.
I think that's a very important question also, and I think Professor Aditya is the best place to say that he used to head the SlimTech. I think interesting TPP model for innovation, and I'm sure you faced the struggle in getting private sector to buy into this idea. So I'm going to break for a quick round of responses.